Welcome to your Dogcast, where we feature news just for dog lovers. Here's your Rover Reporter, Mary Lou Davidson.
Today, we're going to wander a bit from the usual path on the Rover Reporter, where we'll interview groomers, trainers, and veterinarians. We're going to get into some deeper thinking about the canine and human bond. And to join us in this conversation, I'm happy to welcome Dr. Erhard Vogel. He is the founder and the leader of the Nataraja Yoga and Meditation Center in La Jolla, California. He has a PhD in psychology, and he's a dog lover. Welcome, Erhard.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. I've looked at your bio, and I've heard you as a guest on other podcasts, and people always refer to the period in your life where you gave up architecture and you went to study with the Himalayan sages. And they kind of pass over that like it's just another benchmark of a lifetime. And I really wanted to ask you about that to kind of set the tone for what we'll be talking about. How did that come to be?
Well, I spent in 1970, I gave up my position in a world-renowned architectural firm to wander the earth. And I spent 4 years living out of a backpack and in a little tent, mostly walking and hitchhiking through the United States, Europe, all the Arab nations, Afghanistan, India, Nepal, and so on. And when I arrived in India, it was like coming home, because what India stands for, well, which isn't the whole country, is not what you would say is all spiritual, but they're very different from us here. But I went to the Himalayas, where I met these two world-renowned sages. They had a calling throughout the world more than the Pope. I mean, they are holy men. And they recognized me and took me in their midst, and we exchanged stories and techniques and so on, and they were astonished. And they said, you know, everything that we know, we've learned through this rich history of literature and spiritual teachings, like the Puranas and the Vedas and Upanishads and what you have. And you have all of that, but you don't have those teachings. You don't have that literature. Well, I had developed all of this on my own with a strange upbringing during World War II as a child, with meeting death and so on. I had to straighten out quickly, you know. And so I didn't go there to study. They asked me to teach there. So I was a rare specimen, a Westerner teaching among the Himalayan sages. And they were my friends until, the two of them were my closest friends until they finally left the body. You know, they were old enough, they were in their late 80s and 90s, you know. So that's how that came about.
Okay, so I've got to ask, was there a culture around dogs there? I mean, we know that in India there's a closer relationship to nature and to sentient beings.
It's an interesting question, but it's also, so I was there in the 70s, and there would be dogs hanging around the ashrams. Ashrams are where the sages, or sometimes not sages, live. They would come because in the evening gatherings afterwards, they would always have like what they call prasad, which is everybody partakes of like a little bit of dessert or something like that. And it often was so untasty that it would be passed on to the dogs, and that's what they lived off. Wow. There were dogs, but they were all on their own. They didn't have collars, and often they didn't have hair. Mostly they had mange and ribs sticking out, you know.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you'll see more dogs with a collar and on a leash and being cared for. But it's not a culture where that happens often, because it's really still very much a survival of the fittest culture. There isn't anything left to feed pets.
Right. Right.
So, but same thing with cows. The cows walk around freely there because they're all considered part of being. Everything that is being, right? I mean, we all be, we all are, and that energy of being is the essential thing about all of us. And so that's the interconnecting link between everything. So they consider every manifestation or every expression of being sacred.
Yeah. And it's a sacred ecosystem, and everybody kind of supports each other in the ecology of it.
Right. And so the cows wander around on the streets, and they eat the movie placards that are plenty off the walls, and or they will come sometimes to a vegetable seller who's squatting on the ground with a piece of cloth with the vegetables on it. But they always have a stick with which they hit the cows over the head when the cows come to steal vegetables, So it's a casual relationship,
Gotcha. Well, getting back to what you mentioned about your youth when you were really just a little boy, do you remember anything about the culture around dogs in Germany before all hell broke loose?
Well, during the war, I don't remember seeing dogs. Well, I knew about dogs, but Germany has a love for dogs. In fact, they bred, they created certain breeds like the German Shepherd and so on. And as a child, that was my most fervent wish. Beyond survival, my first wish was to have a dog. But I could never have one because we couldn't even feed our family,
Right. Yeah. So you're a German Shepherd guy, and you've had several in your lifetime. So they tend to be super loyal and super bonded to one person. Is there a particular type of training that you employ with your dogs?
I just employ some of the basics, like, that they stay with you when you're walking, that they heel, that they come when you call them, that they stay when you tell them to stay, and that they do what you say. But that's a way of, when they're about 8 weeks old already, you start to relate to them. It's a matter of relationship. You establish a relationship with them, which they're all about. They're all about relationship.
That's right.
And it's always one of love and loyalty. So when you start to, my first one that I had was in 1974. Do you want to see a picture of him?
Please.
I have a picture of him that I brought here just for that.
Oh, Erhard, he is a stunner, really.
Yeah.
What was his name?
His name was Arjuna, which is a hero in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the great literatures of India. Anyway, so he was my first one, and it's like it was worth waiting my life. So I was close to 35 years old when I got my first dog.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just a magnificent creature. He was, like most German Shepherds, are very intelligent. He was with me all the time. So I bought a VW station wagon in 1974 just for him to have, because he was always with me. And he was legal, as you could see in this picture, and big. I mean, he was over 100 pounds, which is big for a German Shepherd, and very handsome, but absolutely loyal. And I taught him some of the basics, and I had to be taught how to train a dog. And there was a neighbor lady here who's like a terrific dog trainer, and she trained me. And I had difficulty telling him what to do, like heel. I wouldn't want to be told to heel. And she says, you got to overcome that because, number one, if he's not well trained, you can't have him with you in social occasions and so on. So he's going to be very restricted. Plus, training him, they love to be trained because he says, I can do what he wants me to do.
Right.
I can understand when he tells me something.
Right. It's a whole communications path that opens up.
Yeah. So the one I have now, August, he's just incredible. Okay, when he was less than a year old, I took him down to the lawn to teach him how to heel on a leash, right? And it usually takes a few weeks for them to get it on the leash, and then you train them to heel without a leash, right? And that takes even more time. And I taught one time, I spent about, the first time, 10 minutes training him how to heel. Next morning, I run down to the lawn, he runs next to me at heel. And I go on the lawn and I thought, well, we're going the same place, that's why this is happening. But then I did like the figure eights and so on, which you do tight circles left and right, see if I could get rid of him. No, he just stuck to my leg as if he were, glued to it. So, and that's how he still is.
Yeah, you're lucky. You said something that reminded me that, they live in the now, they're all about the relationship. And I was thinking about the sensory world that dogs live in, and that, they can smell 6 million times more.
Yes.
It's amplified. Everything is amplified for them. So their sensory world is all about what's right in front of them. So they don't have to worry about judging, and they wake up happy. And they're also, they're problem solvers. So
yes.
If you present them with a puzzle, or if you're walking through the woods and there's a creek and they're not sure how to get over it, they won't turn back. They'll find a way.
Yeah.
So it occurs to me that people could benefit from observing more. And that's kind of where you come from.
Right. Mary, it occurs to me while you're talking about that, I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for over 50 years. And I've taught all over the world, including in the Himalayas with the sages. But when I was traveling like through Turkey, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and so on, I taught all the time because I wanted to study what is their relationship to reality, to reality, not belief systems or opinions and so on. And so in my teaching with them, I also learned what they are about. And I really learned that my main teacher in life is dogs. I've learned more from dogs than from spiritual leaders because the dogs are true. They're honest. Well, most of them are. I mean, I have a little schnauzer. She's very smart. And I have 2 German shepherds, but she is in charge,
Wow. Yeah.
And she sometimes tries to convince me that I didn't feed her yet when I did. So she's not totally honest.
The trickster.
But the German shepherds don't do that. It's not in their DNA to lie.
Right. Not a devious bone in their body.
And you know what? They are masters at loving.
Mm.
They just, and they have their boundaries too. They love you according to what you are like and what their relationship is with you. And I always marvel in their relationship with me, their limitless love. There's no border to it. There's no condition to it, It's just love.
And no judging. It doesn't matter what you look like or what the last thing you did was, they're still there for you no matter